from Carolina Takedown Talk. We are here with the man, Tanner Sewell from the Recruiting Accelerator. Thank you so much for joining us. Super excited to talk to you as always.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be on. It's a great time of year to talk recruiting. So I'm glad we're able to get something in.
No doubt, man. I mean, like you said, and here in North Carolina, I know that you cover the whole country. So I know that you've been working like a madman trying to keep up with all your guys and how they're doing the state tournaments and everything. Here in North Carolina, we just wrapped up our state tournament, wrapped up our regular season, and wanted to kind of talk about that. There's a lot of anxiety before and after the state tournament, right? So many people put so much weight into their performance at the state tournament, right? I mean, kids, and I think I don't want to say wrong per se, because the state tournament's big. It's everyone's dream is to win a state title, but I think some people put a little bit too much weight of, you always see that senior walk off the mat that didn't win that state title. It says, man, like, I'm done. I'm never, going to wrestle again. And it's not the case, is it?
No, it shouldn't be. I really go by this really general rule of thumb, and it's that if a kid is committed, right, to the sport of wrestling, loves the sport of wrestling, is deeply passionate about it and very motivated, internally motivated to do it, then they can find a place to wrestle. Right. That's going to be a good fit for them. Of course, the state tournament's important, right? I mean, no one should be at least going to the state tournament and just, thinking it's Candyland, right? I mean, you're going out there to compete. You're going out there to win.
Yeah.
But I think, and, based on a lot of our discussions, right, like, kids are putting a lot of pressure on themselves at the state tournament as it pertains to their college wrestling future. And that's a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. It's like we talked about, pre-show, right? Like, of course you can raise your recruiting value at the state tournament.
Right.
You can also lower it at the state tournament. But really that is, college coaches are really looking for how you're wrestling, what your attitude is like, how you're wrestling in a tough tournament like this. Really ways, the primary way that you can really blow your value at a state tournament is by acting like a fool,
right?
Losing your class, losing your composure, sportsmanship, things like that. But very rarely, now there are college coaches that will disagree on this, but they're much fewer than you think. Very rarely will a loss at a state tournament be the end all be all for your college wrestling career.
Right. I mean, so I guess with that being said, I mean, we did a video where we talked to 8 college coaches in North Carolina, and they all kind of said the same thing, right? Of we're looking for that tough, gritty kid, the kid that wrestles back if they take that loss, just like you said, the kid that doesn't act like a fool, right? I mean, keeps his composure. They want kids that are coachable. So a lot of people, every kid's dream is to win that state title, right? Whether you're a freshman or a senior, if you're wrestling the state tournament, I talked about it before the state tournament, your goal should be to come in and win a state title. I mean, in my opinion, whether it's realistic or not.
If you're at the state tournament?
Yeah. If you're qualified. If you're qualified. Yeah. I mean, a freshman that they're wrestling their first match next year, maybe your goal shouldn't be to win a state title right then, right? Like maybe it should be win that first varsity match, win 10 matches,
Sure.
Goals, right? But if you qualify, I don't care if you take 4th at the regions, you punch your ticket, your goal coming into the Greensboro Coliseum should be to win a state title.
Absolutely.
To win that title.
And it's amazing how many kids, again, having been in the coaching circuit myself, right? Been on both sides of the fence. It's amazing how many kids will go to the state tournament and just get there and be like, you know what? If I just get on the podium or I'm just happy I'm here.
Yeah.
it's really a free for all. It's really who's going to go put out and have the best tournament is really what it's about. I mean, all bets are really off. Generally speaking, of course,
Right.
you have some anomalies, but there are no rules that say that you can't win the state title if you're there. If you're there, that's what you should be going for. And look, that's what coaches are going to be evaluating. How are you wrestling at this tournament? Are you going out really putting it on the line, like wrestling like a madman with no not letting the environment affect you? One of the things that a college coach told me one time, he said, one of the main things I'm watching for, he's in New York at the New York State tournament, is I want to see how they wrestle in this environment. I want to see how they wrestle in the arena. I want to see how they wrestle with it being a big deal. Why? Mm-hmm. Because he saw that as how they were going to wrestle at NCAAs or at the conference tournament. And he saw it, well, if they freeze up, if they get all whacked out, if they don't wrestle like themselves, if they allow the environment to dictate their performance, it did, in his eyes at least, decrease their recruiting value. Right. He wanted to see a kid, and again, he wasn't talking about the outcomes, right? Mind you, let's be really clear about that. This is a Division I head coach, by the way. Not, he's recruiting creme de la creme kids.
Yeah.
He wasn't talking about the outcome. He was talking about the, how they wrestled, their effort, their attitude, their aggression, their positional awareness. Like, are they, again, those things, right? Not their performance. So again, it is possible to wrestle a great match and not win it.
Right. And raise your stock,
100%.
And that's one thing with like the state tournament I'm pretty sure it was Coach Lozier from Davidson in our video where we interviewed a few college coaches. He was saying like, hey, we want to see how they warm up, right? Like, how are they treating their body before they go on the mat? How are they stepping onto the mat? They listen to their coaches before, like, how are they preparing, things like that. So, we talked about how every kid's goal going into the state tournament should be a state champ, right? To leave as the man. Okay. But the reality is that only in North Carolina, only 4 kids from each weight leave as state champ. Right. I mean, there's only 4 classifications. Only 4 guys leave from this tournament this past weekend as state champs. So in the recruiting world, okay, so everyone knows that you win a state title. College coaches love to see that. They've even told us that we love having state champs, right?
Right.
But the majority don't leave as a state champ. So what is, in the recruiting world, in the recruiting process, for, I would say, juniors and seniors this year, or for anyone, what's your advice, or what should their game plan be after maybe not reaching that goal here, right? Not winning that state title. What's next? Because like we've already talked about, it's not the end of the road. They're not, if they don't want it to be. Now, for some of them, the harsh reality is that some kids won't wrestle in college, right? But there's a spot for most kids. There's an opportunity for most kids, and I think that's one of the great things that about your program is that you are great at finding those fits. If you have a kid that is passionate that wants to wrestle in college, you're one of the best at finding a spot for that kid. Yeah. So what's the game plan? What's the next step, I guess, is the best way to put it, leaving this past weekend?
Yeah. So the first thing, obviously, take a deep breath and realize that the sun's going to come up tomorrow. That's really the first thing. But as it pertains to recruiting, it's really dependent on what grade the kid is in. But I'm going to speak generally here because we could talk all night about the differences between what kids should be doing at what point in their high school career for their recruiting. But let's just say you have a kid doesn't have the state tournament that they wanted to have, right? The first thing they need to do is again, They need to have a plan if they're serious about wrestling in college. That's the first step. Like, this is where people flounder, is they're like, oh crap, what do I do? Well, you got to have a plan, right? Again, this is where I come in, but I'm going to give you a couple things. Like, first of all, extract the silver linings from the state tournament. What were the silver linings? What did you learn? Where do you need to improve? And that's not just an internal conversation, but also a conversation with your coach too, and figure out where you got to get better, right? Like, what could you have done differently? And you can make those mistakes an investment, right? Like, if you learn what you could have done better and you don't do those things again, well, that gives you a much better chance of getting what you want the next year.
I like that a lot. Use it as an investment. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Extract your lessons, right? And that's what college coaches like want to see too, is like, they want to see that you're learning. They want to see that you're growing. They want to see that you're training and that you're getting better. So first of all, you need to have that conversation with yourself and have the conversation with your coaches, your club coach, or high school coach. Document those things, write them down. The second thing is, again, I individually work kids through this whole process, but you need to communicate that, right, to the coaches that you're in communication with. Is like, hey, look, I didn't get what I wanted, right? I didn't get the goal that I wanted, but here's what I learned, right? I learned X, Y, Z, and here's what I'm doing about it. I'm back on the mat. I'm doing this, and I'm hungry. And here's my next competition. I'm wrestling at NHSCAs in April, right? So, basically saying, hey, look, I didn't get what I wanted, but I learned this, and here's what I'm doing about it. The biggest mistake that anybody can make, and I want to mention it now before I forget, but the biggest mistake that anybody can make, whether you won a state title or you didn't get what you wanted, is to tell coaches that you're taking a break. If you communicate to a coach that that you need to take a break, that is communicating to them like, hey, I'm burned out, or like whatever. And if you're in college coaches, like if they start to see you're getting burned out in high school, they know they're like, oh, I'm going to stay away from this kid because there's a chance you're going to burn out in college, and they need you for 4 to 5 years.
Right. So, now, whenever you say take a break, now is that just from competing, or is that just from like, because a pretty common thing I feel like is, kid after state tournament, hey, take a week off, let my body rest for a second, and then I'm right back to work, right? Or are you talking long term of, hey, my season ended, I'm taking a break to see where I'm at, to see if I want to keep wrestling? Or like, whenever you say don't take a break, are you talking short term? Or are you talking, a longer period of time here?
No, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that even if you need to take a break, like if you need to take a step back and like you need to take a month off or something, don't tell the coach that. And people are like, oh, well, you're being dishonest. No, you're not. You're not being dishonest, but it's a need to know basis. Like, do they need to know that? No. If you tell them that, what's going to happen? It's going to decrease your value. So and here's the other thing. There's ways that you can take breaks that aren't really taking a break. You can still lift. You can still, watch film. You can still, participate like in another sport. You can still do all kinds of different things that constitute a quote unquote break. Taking a break doesn't mean you're going to sit on the couch and like eating potato chips. But you don't let the coach, don't tell the coach anything that's going to lead him to believe that you are burning out or that you're not motivated or anything like that. Everything that you need to be communicating to the coach needs to be upbeat, positive, and here's my game plan. Right? I say that because I've heard coaches come and tell me, hey, look, like if a kid tells me that they're taking a break and that they need a rest from wrestling, especially at the Division I level. D3 is different because you actually do take a break in D3. There's actually like, you can't wrestle 12 months out of the year in D3. Right. But at the Division I level, it does definitely hurt a kid for sure.
Right.
And yeah, so what I'm saying is communicate, what your outcome is. Yeah, communicate your outcome, communicate your silver lining, communicate what your game plan is, and execute your game plan. I mean, that's a way to increase your value. Do not blame it on anybody. Don't say I got hurt and I got injury defaulted for third and fourth. No one cares, dude. Like, oh, the ref made a bad call. Sorry, dude. Nobody cares. Like, don't make excuses for the outcome. You take full responsibility for it. Like, if you blame it on somebody else, again, huge red flag. So take ownership for your outcome. Take ownership for how you did. That's on you. That's on nobody else. And learn from it and then move forward. So if you communicate it in that way, again, what your outcome was, what you learned, and then what you're going to do about it moving forward. That's it. It's that simple, real clean. And you communicate it like that, coaches are going to appreciate it, and they're going to respect that maturity.
Right. So, say a kid wants to really grow his stock this off season, right? So the regular season's over. We love seeing kids keep on competing. Are camps the right way? Are these national tournaments like Virginia, Virginia Beach Nationals, right? Fargo, for one example, I know that Fargo is freestyle and Greco. And so some college coaches aren't, it may not affect their stock as much. For me, I love Fargo. I love getting kids to go wrestle freestyle and Greco. I really think that here in North Carolina, we need to keep on growing that, because I just think that anything kids getting on the mat here and going and wrestling nationally is going to help us to continuously grow. Right. But, Super 32 right before the kind of the school year starts, right there at the end of the summer kind of deal. But what's the best way for these kids? And I guess this is talking more for juniors, right? Because seniors, this summer competing is big, but I mean, I guess it could go either way. But what's the best way to raise a kid's stock? Is it going to a camp? Is it getting in front of these coaches' faces at these camps, or is it going and competing these national tournaments, or is it both?
So you're asking like about exposure, like what's the best way
to get exposure and grow and raise your stock.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of ways, but from a competition standpoint, I call it proactive exposure. And yes, getting outside of the state, like at least getting outside of if the state tournament is the biggest tournament you're wrestling at during the year, that's a pretty clear sign that's a pretty good indicator that like you're not going D1. I mean, is that a straightforward fast rule? No, but it's a pretty clear cut. It's a pretty good indicator that you're not, Definitely. But on that note, like, yes, one of the, getting out there and wrestling the nation's best, first of all, you're going to see how you stack up. So you're going to see like, how you stack up. What's the, how are you stacking up against the country's best right outside of North Carolina? Because here's the reality. And this is not just a North Carolina thing. All right. So this is not, I'm from North Carolina. I love the state of North Carolina. My heart's in North Carolina. But college coaches are not putting a lot of stock into the North Carolina state tournament. They're just not. And so you have to get outside of that to really open up your opportunities. And you do that really with the big three, right? Fargo's a great one, Super 32 and NHLCAs. So if you're really serious about wrestling in college, you get out to those three. Now, how you do at those three, okay, whatever. College coaches want to see that you're wrestling there, at least as a baseline. So it's kind of a baseline expectation, to be completely honest. Like now you might go there and go 2-2. If you go 2-2 at Super 32, that's actually not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I mean, there's state champs in North Carolina that go to Super 32 and go 0-2.
Yeah, and go over. Yeah, no joke. I mean, it's same. Yeah,
it happens all the time.
We see it all the time. We see it.
I've seen nationally ranked kids go 1-2. Like
right, exactly. And it's not just North Carolina. It's all across the country. Like that's just how tough that tournament is. That a state champ can come there and go. As Ryan says on the show, 0-2 barbecue, right? Like gone out. And so.
But it's a baseline expectation that you're wrestling at the national level. And one of the things that, people need to keep in mind is that wrestling at the national level, yes, is great. It's awesome. But is your training proportionate to where you're wrestling at? Like if you're going to go to Fargo, you better be training to wrestle at Fargo. Like, the training regimen needs to be lined up with the tournament, that you're going to, so if you're going to Super 32, train like you're about to wrestle at a national tournament. If you're going to train like you're wrestling at the national level. And that training piece is big, like learning how to train, learning how to do those things is a big part of preparing yourself to be collegiate athlete. So, and that's really where I would say the coach really comes in. One of the main areas the coach really comes in as it pertains to college recruiting, and kids should be getting constant active feedback from their coach, like asking their coach, "Hey coach, my goal is to be a state champ. Is my training on par with that goal? Coach, my goal is to get on the podium at Fargo. Am I training like an All-American?" Right. And get that active feedback. If you have a coach worth their salt, and there's plenty down there in North Carolina, they'll tell you straight up. They should at least, if they're a good coach, they're going to be honest with you and say, "No, Johnny, you're not training like a Fargo All-American." Or, "No, Johnny, you're not training like a D1 guy. Like you got to make these adjustments." So as kids can make those adjustments, it increases their value, right? So I know that's kind of a tangent, but yeah.
No, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And I love that. I mean, I feel like we do have the club scene now, that we have coaches that understand that. And, like you said, they're worth their salt. They'll tell kids that. And I think that's a great case because these off-season tournaments, some kids, I made the mistake of it my first year at Fargo of, I was going to football workouts and everything else. And then I thought that I was just going to go up to Fargo and be able to wrestle and be able to scrap, right? Just like it was nothing. I was heavily mistaken, ran into Sam Stoll in the quarters and did not have a fun time in Greco,
that's a Jesus.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the last guy I would have wrestled in Greco.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Absolute monster. But no, I mean, I love what you're doing, man.
And I want to say something real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a great point that you're bringing up. You go out there and you wrestle a legitimate Division I Power 5 guy, Sam Stoll, heavyweight at Iowa, right? You got to feel, see, taste what it was like to wrestle a blue chip heavyweight.
Yeah.
So why is that important for North Carolina kids?
It's insanely important.
It's important because now you're seeing what's out there, right? Like you're seeing what is out there and how you actually stack up. And it should not discourage anybody. If anything, if you're serious about it, it should fire you up. Be like, what do I got to do to get at the level? Do I got to lift heavier? What do I got to do? How do I get there? Right. But you're going to see Power 5 guys out there, which is frankly, and here's the other thing I want to add on this, is not just a comparison, right? But it's also a huge opportunity. Like, if a North Carolina kid who's competitive, good, solid, really good kid, but under the radar, which happens all the time because North Carolina kids are under the radar all the time. No one really recruits North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia. Facts. And I'll agree on that.
We're trying to change that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and that's a process, right?
Yeah.
Like, it
doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly. I mean, but that's 90% of states in the United States.
Exactly.
When I say that, when I go and run these things at run seminars and stuff in different parts of the country, I say that people take it personal and they're like, oh, and I'm like, no. You're you're 90% of states here. But my point is that if let's just take your situation, right? You wrestle Sam Stoll. Yep. Let's say you go out there and you wrestle him to a decision.
Yep.
That is recruiting value right there.
Instant.
People are going to see that because they're watching Sam Stoll. All eyes are on Sam Stoll at this point in his high school career. Everyone's trying to recruit Sam Stoll. Tom Brand just happened to get it.
Yeah.
Well, they see you, and let's say you wrestle him to a decision, or you hit him with a throw, or you do something and you keep it, whatever. They're going to say, oh crap, who is this kid?
Yeah.
So that's another reason why it's so important to wrestle outside of the state at these national tournaments, because there are lots of eyes on your top 100s.
Yeah.
If you draw a top 100, you should think you hit the lottery.
Because you instantly have eyes on you.
Yep. De facto.
Yep.
People, it's just the fact. If you're a top 100 kid, top 50 kid, really, coaches are watching you. That they have it. I'm telling you, I've seen this, and you've seen it too. When you have these D1 head coaches, and I would say D2, D3, of course, all of them. I'm not going to split them all up. But when they go to that tournament, they know who they're watching.
Yeah. They have that list.
They have the list. And the serious ones, like Frank Beasley and his staff, they are at every mat. Every single mat watching.
Right. We saw that Super 32.
There were 10, I wouldn't say 10. I would say 5 kids somewhere in that range that Frank saw, that had identified and were on his radar now, because those kids had wrestled kids that he was recruiting really tough or beat them. So there is your main reason why you want to really talk about exposure. That's how you get exposure, because eyes are on the top 50. You get a top 50 guy, you hit the lottery.
Right.
That's how you got to look at it.
And you wrestle him as tough as you possibly can, and you make the best name for yourself off of that match.
Yeah. And then you're playing on house money and you're emptying the tank.
Yep.
That should be the funnest match ever.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because you see so many kids go out there, they see who they draw, and they
shell up.
Yep. Oh, I can't believe this.
And they start looking at the Conti side, and they give up on it. It's just like, man, but the beautiful thing about wrestling is you could hit that throw. You could chuck that kid on his head and catch him, right?
Yeah,
you could stick that kid.
Especially if you have been training.
Yes.
For those
if you've prepared correctly. Yeah.
Yeah. If you've been preparing for those tournaments and you've been legitimately training, yes, you should be training for those moments. So, that's the biggest piece of I would say. But then further, we talk about value, recruiting value, and recruiting value is so much more than just wrestling, right? In the program, we identify 5 areas, right? And that really make up a recruit's value. And the wrestling piece is only one of 5. Lifestyle is a big one. Heart, how much they actually love the sport is a big one. How mentally tough are they? There's plenty of good wrestlers, and you have known lots of them over the years who are really good wrestlers, but mentally are not tough at all.
Yeah.
And you've known really, really good wrestlers who live really bad lifestyles. You've known really good wrestlers who don't even like wrestling.
Right. They just do it because they're good at it.
They just do it because they're good at it, or because their parents expect them to do it. And there's been really good wrestlers who just have no self-presentation skills whatsoever. So my point is that you could be going out being the man. If you don't have the other areas, it doesn't matter. So, the value, like a college coach is going to be much more attracted to a kid who is more well-rounded and really loves the sport, as opposed to a kid who's just absolutely slaughtering everybody, but there's red flags in other areas. And I could give lots of examples, but I'm not going to drop names on the show.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And if people have been around the sport for any period of time, you could name kids like that.
Right. Exactly. I mean, there should be, if you follow the sport at all, at any level, there's names you can easily just think of right there where it's like, God, that kid was so good, but you could just tell he doesn't love it.
I'll give you an example, and I'm not going to, this was not your podcast. I think this was like 3 years ago. It was a North Carolina podcast. There was a kid on it. I was listening to it, and the kid was talking about, it was like the ego was blowing, like it was just in my face. And I was like, no way would I ever want this kid on my team.
Right.
Ever. Like, the kid's an egomaniac. A college coach listens to that or sees his behavior and gets an egomaniac red flag. Yeah, right, buddy. Your value I don't care how good you are, because guess what? You go to those national tournaments and you see you're really not that special. There's lots of really good wrestlers.
There's always somebody better. Yeah.
I mean, you've seen, we were at Super 32 together this year. There's freaking hammers everywhere, dude.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
They're everywhere.
8th graders winning high school brackets now.
Yeah. So like, being a good wrestler is not enough anymore.
And I feel like, with that point, I feel like there's a difference on being confident in yourself and betting on yourself, right? Like, to be an elite wrestler and to be on the national level, you have to have confidence in yourself, but there's a difference in, like you said, having like that egomaniac, just just shove it in your face and like down your throat. Like, I'm the best, whatever. There's a difference between that. And there's a difference between knowing your worth and knowing like the work that you've put in and having confidence on yourself and betting on yourself. Right.
100%. Yeah. They're apples and oranges, right? I mean, the best wrestlers that, and coaches, frankly, the best people in the sport that I know, some of the most humble people I've ever met.
Yep.
They don't really talk about their accolades. They don't really talk about themselves unless they're asked. And they just do the work, and then they put it on the line when it matters. They show people, they don't tell people, and so 100%. And look, the red flags can come in so many different ways, right? Like, it could be a kid who just doesn't take school seriously, like doesn't apply themselves in school. I'm not saying the kid's got to be a freaking genius, because most of us aren't, but if they're not taking school seriously and they don't prioritize it, or at least they're not applying themselves, as they just like don't care about it, that's a big red flag for a college coach. If there's any indication that a kid doesn't love the sport, big red flag, or just isn't mentally composed. I mean, I'll give you an example of that too. By the recruiting accelerator booth at Super 32 this year, good kid, D1 commit. He had committed. I'm not going to say where he committed. I'm not going to say his name. Came off the mat. I thought he was going to destroy one of the booths. I mean, just went nuts, berserk, lost all composure. He was committed. But you look at that, college coach sees that, and they're like, yeah, right, dude. Like, I don't want to deal with that for 5 years. No way. Go somewhere else. I'll go find another kid like you. Like, I can. There's hundreds of them here. So I guess the point of this, like one of the big takeaways, is the wrestling skills are very important, but you got to have more.
if that's something that sets you apart. Yeah. And I guess it's just finding that for each kid, right?
Yeah.
Just finding what's going to be the thing at these national tournaments that's going to set you apart. Is it wrestling that top 100, that top 50 kid that we talked about, and wrestling them tough, right? Wrestling them hard in every position. Maybe you get majored, maybe you get stuck, right? But wrestling them tough in each position and setting yourself apart from the kid who wrestled them the round before that said, well, this kid's committed to wherever, right? This kid's committed to Minnesota. I'm never going to beat him, and going out there and getting stuck in the first period. It's finding, I guess, little ways to separate yourself and make yourself more recruitable, and controlling things. And I feel like that's the big thing, is that control the things you can control, right? You can control where you go and compete. You can control how you respond after a match. And I don't want people to misunderstand it of like, if you lose a match, you shouldn't care, right? That's not what I'm saying at all. And I don't think that's what you're saying at all either, of like, it stings. It sucks to lose in the state finals, right? Like, trust me, it's horrible, but that's good. That means you care about it, right? But it's about how you walk off the mat, right? Like it stinks to lose at the national tournament, like that was your next goal, especially if you didn't reach, your goal of winning a state title is, wrestling in nationals is your next big chance. Like, it stinks to lose and not get that goal, but there's eyes on you. If you're doing the right things and you're separating yourself from the crowd, then there's going to be eyes on you, and how you respond to adversity is big.
Yeah. And one of the things I'll add here is that, and this is something that North Carolina kids and other kids in similar states, in most states, need to realize, is that, it's not enough just to think that you're going to end up, that college coaches are going to show up and start recruiting you. And this is where I really come in, because so many people take a reactive approach, and they're like, well, if I do these things, if I do all the right things, right? Like live a good life, do my school, wrestle hard, win a state title, I'll have coaches coming in recruiting me. No, not necessarily. That's a big assumption. Being proactive about the recruiting process is critical. The second most important factor is timing. I see so many kids who just don't account for the timing of it. Timing being, you should get started sooner than later. Start preparing for it at least. I get tons of juniors every year calling me now their state tournament's over, and they think that they're on schedule. And I'm like, no, buddy, you're like a year behind.
Right. It's not too late, but you're behind the 8 ball.
100%. Yeah. If you're a junior and you have not gotten started at all proactively, you are behind.
Right.
And seniors, good Lord, I get probably 3 to 5 seniors this time of year.
Yeah.
Who call. And look, God bless them, right? At least they're being honest, and they're like, hey, I really want to go out and do it. But, just what I would say as a takeaway for this is that if a kid is serious about wrestling in college, there are things that they can do right now, regardless of what grade they're in.
Definitely. So where can they find you? Where can they find your program? Go ahead and give them all of that information so they can get a hold of you and start that process, right? These freshmen and sophomore get in front of the 8 ball, and then those juniors and seniors that have waited a good while too late here. I don't want to say too late, but they've waited, it's not too late.
Their back's against the wall.
Yeah. Their back's against the wall. They're throwing a Hail Mary, but you're the perfect person to have in their corner. Where can they find you? Where can they get a hold of you to start with your program?
Yeah. A quick stat on our seniors. So we had 5 seniors, all of whom were North Carolina, by the way, last year. Yeah. Who contacted me in March, April. All 5 are wrestling in college right now. Yeah. So we made it happen for all of them. And not just any school, but a school that was a really good fit for them, where they're happy. Right. And that's the objective of the recruiting process, is finding fit. Find somewhere where you're happy, where you're going to be happy, where you can thrive academically, thrive athletically, thrive socially, and be okay financially. So people can find me on Facebook. They can just add me, Tanner Sewell. We also have a Facebook group that I post a lot in called the Recruiting Accelerator Community Hub. They can go to my website, which is recruiting-accelerator.com. They can, and on the website, they can schedule a call with me, a totally free 30-minute complimentary call whenever, on their schedule. And there's also, I created like a 3-minute sort of application where families can go through, and that link is on the website too, where they can go through and sort of find out whether or not my program is a good fit for them. And yeah, so they can do that. That's the best way to reach me. And then schedule a strategy call. We'll figure out, there is a special price for Carolina Takedown Talk listeners. So make sure you mention Carolina Takedown Talk whenever you schedule a call or message me, and we'll make sure you get taken care of.
Awesome, man. Thanks for everything you're doing for wrestling, not only in North Carolina, but across the country. You're one of the best to it. Like we always say, if someone's trying to get recruited in college, we put them straight to you. You're the man. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule in this time of the season to talk to us and to let these North Carolina kids hear from you.
Of course, brother. Happy to do it, man. Thanks for everything you're doing too.
Appreciate it. We're out, guys.